Welcome to the Deep Dive. We cut through the noise to give you clear insights into really complex events. Today, we're tackling something truly harrowing. The catastrophic Central Texas floods back in July 2025. It was a summer weekend that just turned into an absolute nightmare for so many. Just devastating loss, harrowing escapes. You hear survivors talk about the water coming like a pitch black wall of death. One person recalling their shed literally banging against the house. That's how fast it rose.
It really is a heartbreaking event. And the numbers, well, they're stark, but they only scratch the surface. We're talking over 82 confirmed deaths, and tragically that includes many children.
Yeah.
And the economic hit, estimated over $10 billion. Just gone. Whole neighborhoods submerged, homes obliterated, campgrounds just wiped off the map.
It's hard to even picture, and our mission today for you listening isn't just to recount what happened. We want to really unpack the layers here. We'll look at the unique mix of factors that caused it, dig into the complexities around warnings and preparedness, and also, crucially, look ahead at the strategies now being developed to build resilience. We've pulled together quite a stack of sources, detailed weather analyses, official government reports, those incredibly powerful survivor accounts, and even, interestingly, financial sector analysis looking at climate resilience investments.
Right. The goal is to piece together a comprehensive, nuanced picture of something that really caught so many people completely off guard.
So let's start with the immediate impact. It was just staggering, hitting the heart of the Texas Hill Country, areas along the Guadalupe River, mainly July 4th to July 6th, 2025. This wasn't just, a bad storm. It was a sudden, violent event that reshaped the land and shattered lives.
That's exactly right. And the human toll, that remains the most tragic part. At least 82 confirmed dead. In Kerr County alone, that included 28 children and 40 adults, plus another 28 to 41 people reported missing at the time.
Those numbers are hard to grasp. Behind every single one, a life cut short, a family devastated, a community just fundamentally changed.
It's a profound loss, truly.
And the tragedy at Camp Mystic really brings that home, doesn't it?
It does. An all-girls Christian summer camp near Hunt. It was hit incredibly hard. 2 confirmed deaths there. One was the camp director, Dick Eastland, who actually died trying to save campers. Just heroic and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And on top of that, 27 girls from the camp were declared missing in the initial chaos. It's just a terrible, vivid example of how fast and unexpected this was, especially hitting in the dark early hours.
And the economic damage, you mentioned over $10 billion. But beyond the money, it's the speed, the sheer destructive force of that water that leaps out from survivor stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Consider this, the Guadalupe River near Hunt. It rose an incredible 22 feet in just 2 hours.
2 hours?
Yeah, before the gauge monitoring, it couldn't keep up. And in Kerrville, it was 26 feet in only 45 minutes.
Wow.
You hear people describing it. One survivor said water rising from right there to right here, and then another 10 minutes, the water was like this high. It was scary. It's really scary. That's a direct quote.
Paints a terrifying picture. Just overwhelming speed. So the immediate impact, clearly catastrophic. But, okay, how did this nightmare actually happen? Let's peel back those layers. Why this specific region? What makes Central Texas so uniquely vulnerable?
What it really boils down to a meteorological perfect storm hitting an area with inherent geographical vulnerabilities. The immediate trigger. Just an incredible amount of moisture fueling a storm system that dumped over 12 inches of rain on the hill country in just several hours.
12 inches is a lot, but some places got even more.
Oh, yeah. Some spots saw 5 to 11 inches in just a few hours. And one location, northwest of Streeter, recorded a staggering 20.33 inches.
20 inches. That's unbelievable.
It is. And this wasn't just a regular thunderstorm. Meteorologists call it a mesoscale convective complex. Basically, think of it like a massive, slow-moving weather engine just sits there, pulling in moisture continuously and relentlessly dumping rain over the exact same area for hours and hours.
Okay, so it just stalled out.
Precisely. That's what turned heavy rain into this catastrophic flood event.
And where did all that moisture come from?
Well, the storm system had plenty of fuel. It was partly fed by the remnants of Atlantic tropical storm Barry, which had tracked over Mexico into Texas. Plus, it pulled in extra moisture all the way from the Pacific Ocean.
Wow, from both sides.
Right. And what really made it potent was the absence of the jet stream at the time. Normally, the jet stream kind of pushes weather systems along. Without it, this huge pool of moisture just sat there, stagnating over Texas, allowing the rain to just keep falling on the same ground.
Hour after hour. Okay.
And that brings us to the geography. Central Texas, specifically the Hill Country, isn't called Flash Flood Alley for nothing.
Right, I've heard that term.
It's known for its steep terrain, very shallow soil, and rugged hills. All of that acts like a natural funnel. Water just shoots down incredibly quickly into narrow river basins. That leads to those really rapid, dangerous rises in water levels.
But there was something else too, wasn't there, about the ground condition?
Yes, a critical factor that made things much worse. The area had actually been in a drought before this deluge hit.
So the ground was dry and hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like concrete, as one report put it.
Right.
It just couldn't absorb that sudden, massive amount of rain. So the water had nowhere to go but run off immediately into the streams and rivers, amplifying the flood surge dramatically.
And the timing.
The timing was terrible. The worst of it hit in the very early morning hours of July 4th. Most people were asleep.
Caught completely unaware.
Completely. Which contributed significantly to the tragedy. People describe it as a once-in-a-generation event. Some even said, once in, 200-year kind of flood.
Now, there's been discussion about climate change in relation to events like this. What's the connection or the thinking there?
It's always tricky to link one specific storm directly to climate change, especially so soon after. But the general principle meteorologists point to is important. A warmer atmosphere holds more moisture. Think of it like a bigger sponge.
Okay, so it can hold more water vapor.
Exactly. So for places like Central Texas, this might not mean more rainstorms overall.
Yeah.
Some studies even suggest maybe fewer in that specific region. But the critical insight is, when storms do form in that warmer, moister atmosphere, they have the potential to be much, much more severe.
They can dump way more rain than they used to.
Precisely. Turning what might have been just heavy rain into a truly catastrophic event like this one.
Okay, so you've got this perfect storm of natural factors. The intense rain, the stalled system, the landscape, the dry ground, the timing. But what about the human element, the warnings? Were they issued? Why didn't they reach everyone? This seems like a really complex part of the story.
It is complex.
Yeah.
And yes, the National Weather Service, the NWS, did issue warnings. Timely ones, too. Flood watches, flash flood warnings for Kerr County. They even use the particularly dangerous situation language, urgent calls like, seek higher ground now.
Okay, so the NWS was doing its job, issuing the alerts.
Right. The first flood watch went out on July 3rd, the day before, at 1:18 p.m. Central Time. And the first flash flood emergency warning was issued at 4:00 a.m. on July 4th, hours before the absolute worst hit some areas. So the alerts existed.
But then, the disconnect. Why did so many survivors say they got no warning?
Several factors seem to be at play there. First, the timing. Again, middle of the night, people are asleep, hard to get their attention.
Right, you're not checking your phone at 4 a.m. necessarily.
Exactly. Then you have communication barriers. Rural areas, spotty phone service maybe, and frankly, not everyone has an official NOAA weather radio or was checking social media feeds in the pre-dawn hours.
Makes sense, but there was something else about local systems, wasn't there? Or the lack thereof.
Yes, and this is where it gets really interesting, particularly when you think about local preparedness and community choices. Kerr County, despite being squarely in Flash Flood Alley, despite having a history of deadly floods,
Yeah.
it didn't have an official audible flood warning system. Like tornado sirens.
No sirens for floods in Flash Flood Alley.
Apparently not. In past proposals to install a robust system like that, they weren't implemented.
Why not?
Specifically cited were public concerns about the cost and a stated unwillingness within the local community to pay the taxes needed for it.
So a local decision based on cost concerns. That really highlights the trade-offs communities face, doesn't it? Fiscal responsibility versus investment in potentially life-saving infrastructure.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
It puts the focus squarely on local decision-making and priorities when it comes to preparedness spending.
And there was another factor officials mentioned: warning fatigue.
Yeah, that's a real phenomenon. Officials noted that the public can sometimes get weary, maybe even complacent, if there are too many alerts for floods or storms that turn out to be minor.
The cry wolf effect.
Exactly. Which, tragically, can lead people to maybe not take a warning as seriously when a truly catastrophic event like this one finally happens.
Now, what about the NWS itself? There were some questions raised about staffing.
There were. Some sources pointed to potential impacts from federal staffing or budget situations affecting NWS and NOAA. They noted some specific vacancies, like a couple of key meteorologists retiring earlier in 2025, raising concerns about their capacity to predict floods and coordinate warnings effectively during a major crisis.
Okay, but was that actually a factor in this event?
Well, that's where you need the balanced view. Other sources, including statements possibly from the NWS, indicated that the crucial Austin-San Antonio forecast office was staffed overnight during the flood.
Ah, Okay.
And they suggested that the flood itself, its occurrence and severity, wasn't influenced by those specific personnel changes. Sufficient staff were reportedly on duty.
So it sounds like even with dedicated people working hard, the sheer scale and speed of this flood were just incredibly difficult to manage.
That seems to be the case. It was an extreme event by any measure.
And infrastructure played a role too, beyond just warning systems.
Definitely. The floods really exposed some critical vulnerabilities. Things like aging power transmission lines, over 2,600 households lost power. Outdated drainage systems in some areas were just completely overwhelmed.
And didn't a river gauge fail?
Yes, critically, a key river gauge failed when the water hit 29.5 feet. That deprived officials of vital real-time data right as the water was surging to historic, unprecedented levels.
Just one thing after another compounding the crisis. So this paints a picture of immense devastation caused by a confluence of natural forces and, well, human factors related to preparedness and infrastructure. Where does Central Texas go from here? What's being done to prevent this kind of tragedy again?
Well, the immediate response involved state and federal help. Governor Greg Abbott announced that President Trump approved a major disaster declaration for Kerr County.
Okay, what does that mean practically?
It unlocks federal disaster assistance. FEMA programs, both individual assistance for residents, think temporary housing, home repairs, and public assistance for rebuilding infrastructure. That provides a really vital safety net right after the event.
Essential support, no doubt. But what about looking longer term, preventing the next one?
That's where the focus is shifting now, towards building long-term resilience. And there are some really innovative initiatives taking shape. For example, Texas A&M AgriLife Research is leading a big 30-month project. It's funded by about $4 million in disaster relief funds.
Okay, what's the goal?
Dr. Raghavan Srinivasan, or Srini, is leading it. The really ambitious goal is, and I quote, to predict floods before they happen. They're using predictive models, aiming for real-time information to extend warning times, help county officials plan better.
How? What are they doing on the ground?
Part of it involves deploying new sensors, stream-level sensors, more rain gauges to get better data, and considering infrastructure changes based on what the science tells them.
That sounds promising. Is it just for that one area?
No, and this is key. The project aims to create a transferable blueprint. They want to turn science-backed solutions and, importantly, community perspectives into actionable policies. Arnold Vedlitz from the Bush School really emphasized the need to listen to people, build trust within the community so that they're comfortable with the proactive steps needed for protection.
So lessons learned locally could help other places too, building that local capacity and buy-in.
Exactly. It's about creating solutions that could benefit communities across Texas, maybe even nationally, fostering that sense of self-reliance and better local preparedness.
And beyond government and research, the private sector is stepping in too.
Yes, the floods really shone a spotlight on the urgent need for investment in what's being called climate resilience infrastructure. It's actually being framed as a multi-billion-dollar market opportunity.
Interesting. What kind of investments are we talking about?
Several key areas. One is grid resilience. Think about those power outages. Companies like Energy Texas already had plans, like a $137 million grid hardening project, burying power lines, fortifying substations, proactive investment by the utility itself.
Okay, strengthening the power grid makes sense. What else?
Emergency technology. Solutions for predictive analytics companies like IBM, Trimble are in this space, using data to anticipate problems. Also, things like drone networks for faster damage assessment after an event.
Using tech to get ahead of it or respond faster.
Right. And another really interesting area is insurance innovation. New approaches like parametric insurance.
Parametric, how does that work?
Companies like Swiss Re, Munich Re are pioneering this. Instead of waiting for adjusters to assess damage, which takes time, parametric insurance pays out automatically based on a pre-agreed trigger.
Like what?
Like, say, rainfall exceeding a certain number of inches recorded at a specific gauge, or wind speeds hitting a certain level.
Ah, so it's based on the event itself, not the damage amount.
Exactly. It dramatically speeds up the payout process, getting money into the hands of affected communities much faster, cutting through red tape when they need it most.
That can make a huge difference in recovery.
Potentially, yes. Of course, like any big emerging market, there are challenges. Regulatory hurdles for some of these projects, potential cost overruns, maybe industry consolidation. But the need and the drive for these kinds of private sector solutions is definitely there now.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear the Central Texas floods of 2025 were just a tragic intersection of powerful natural forces and some really critical human decisions around preparedness, infrastructure, and maybe even fiscal choices made at the local level over time. It starkly highlights that complex problem. Even with timely warnings issued by agencies like the NWS, ensuring people actually receive and act on those warnings, especially in the dead of night, remains a huge challenge.
Absolutely. And looking ahead, you see this clear dedication now to building a more resilient future there. It's a mix of state-led research, that crucial community engagement piece, and these innovative private sector investments we talked about, all aimed at safeguarding lives and property, with an emphasis on both government support and empowering local initiative and responsibility.
Which really leaves us with a provocative thought, doesn't it, for you listening? These floods are such a powerful reminder that while nature's forces are immense, a community's resilience often hinges on those tough, sometimes expensive choices made before disaster ever strikes. So how do we as a society balance those immediate costs, those local budget concerns, against the long-term imperative of protecting lives and livelihoods from events that seem to be getting more severe? What stands out to you about finding that right balance between individual responsibility, the decisions made by local communities about their own priorities and spending, and the role of broader government support when preparing for these once-in-a-generation or maybe more frequent challenges? Something to think about.